Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Frontenac County Council meeting for Wednesday, March the 15th, 2023. We'll call the meeting to order. No resolution for calling the meeting order? Okay, then we'll do roll call.
So Warden Vandewall, you have quorum.
Oh, that's okay. No closed session, no amendment. Any disclosure of pecuniary issue, interest in the general nature thereof. Yes, Councillor Gowdy.
On item correspondence communications, clause E, the report from Frontenac Transportation due to being my employer.
Thank you. Adoption of the minutes.
Moved by Councillor Greenwood Spears, seconded by Councillor Lichty. Resolved that the minutes of the regular council meeting held February 15th, 2023 be adopted.
Any questions or comments? All in favor? Carried. Move into committee of the whole.
Moved by Deputy Warden Smith, seconded by Councillor Saunders, that council adjourn and meet as committee of the whole council with the deputy warden in the chair.
All in favor? Carried. My work is done.
My work begins. Okay, good morning, everyone. Our next item is Mr. Kelly Pender with the Chief Administrative Officer report.
There, I'm on recent example of the Storey Community Center and certainly our office building. Accessibility isn't just our responsibility, it is the law. And just a reminder that, any municipal building should be reviewed by the Accessibility Committee, and the building code applies to those buildings. But the work of that committee is exemplary, and they've been around for a number of different years in different forms in all municipalities in Ontario. And I think it is a wonderful advancement in making all of our facilities accessible. So thank you to Madam Clerk for organizing those and to all the members. So with that, we'll turn our attention to the March 15th, Beware the Ides of March, as Julius Caesar was warned. And as usual, I'll touch on a couple of things on each slide or skip over some slides for the emo updates, but certainly available to answer any questions either during the meeting or after the meeting. Next slide, please. So I'd like to highlight a couple of things on this slide. First of all, we had our first joint CAO Treasurer meeting on March the 1st in the library here on this property, and thank you to South Frontenac for hosting a number of different items. It's our annual review of our FMIS system, our information services system. David provided an overview. Kevin Farrell, our manager of continuous improvement, also provided an overview on the new LiDAR product. Some of the concerns with Next Gen 911, we're making great progress. We're well over 80% of the properties in Frontenac have been verified either by county staff, mainly our summer staff and Charlene, or through your fire departments who have also helped cooperate. So we're making good progress on that. And it's again, going to change the way that 911 is delivered. When fully active, you'll be able to text an emergency, you'll be able to accurately describe an emergency, and they'll be able to find you. And that field verification work, although very time consuming, is quite important going forward. We had the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus last week in Napanee. on March the 9th and March the 10th, largely looking at what our strategic priorities for 2023 are going to be. And obviously the large project being the 7,000 affordable homes in Eastern Ontario. There are sites in Frontenac County that are being considered as part of the pilot project, which will likely be a phase 1, phase 2 kind of approach for pilot projects. So we're really excited about that work, and we're meeting with the consultant on March the 28th to begin some of the detailed work building on their research. So we're quite excited to be moving forward with that project, and hopefully, Frontenac will be well represented in the project. And there seems to be great interest at both the provincial and federal level in the work of the Warden's Caucus. We also received an update on the Eastern Ontario Paramedic Review update of the 2019 report. Some pretty startling statistics in terms of offload delay and time on task, pretty much reflecting what Chief Chevalier talked to council about during the budget process. It appears is pretty much happening all over Ontario or Eastern Ontario. And we hope to be able to present the final report to County Council probably at the June meeting. But that will form a large part of our advocacy for AMO. We're also presented a letter to the Auditor General, who is doing a value for money audit on long-term care in Ontario, and made that submission, and also made the same submission to the Minister of Long-Term Care. So there continues to be a number of concerns, not the least of which is capital funding, but which is a big issue for Eastern Ontario because we have a number of homes, including Fairmount, which I'm assuming we'll be talking about this afternoon during our strategic planning session, where the provincial funding formula is not adequate for our needs. But the primary issue continues to be the health human resources crisis, and how do we continue to recruit nurse practitioners, nurses, RPNs, PSWs, kitchen help, just about every aspect of our long-term care and healthcare. We are short of workers, and there needs to be a solution. So we're working with that. The Eastern Ontario Leadership Council, which is our economic development arm, we've had several meetings and have another one tomorrow looking at artificial intelligence in healthcare and how that can help with the health human resources crisis. So that's going to be probably coming back to the Leadership Council and the Warden's Caucus sometime later this spring or perhaps in the summer. But we have submitted a grant application. We had our strategic planning session for the Leadership Council in Peterborough, the brand new board meetings. So the two mayors caucus representatives are Mayor Jeff Leal of Peterborough and Mayor Neil Ellis of Belleville, along with Bonnie Clark, who is the warden of Peterborough County, and Roger Haley, who's the past warden of the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville, are the political representatives on that. And going forward, our priorities are going to continue to be labor and innovation. So, for example, artificial intelligence in the labor market, also looking at innovation in housing. As we know, the province has made a significant pledge in terms of the number of houses, and the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus as well, but we just don't have the skilled labor. I know the province made an announcement last week about moving to a model where grade 11 graduates could enter apprenticeship programs. So hopefully that will be helpful. Next slide, please. So I won't go through the AMO communications in any great detail. If we could just flip to the next one, please. Just again, noting the top one there is the Next Gen 911. And I believe at this point, all of our municipalities, save and except North, have signed their PSAP agreements. So really appreciate all the work, and the next step in that is going to be a road name bylaw that will help the municipalities with their road naming and numbering conventions to comply with next gen. AMO in August is in London. I encourage you to book early. Accommodations at the convention center are generally limited, and you'll likely be out at the highway at this point, but AMO is always a don't miss event. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So just a bit of an update on our admin building redevelopment. We had our bi-weekly meeting yesterday, and we're finally at the point where we're seeing a lot of progress. The entire level 0, which is the former paramedic suite, which is the Cataraqui Region Conservation Authority, most of the drywall is on there. We're finishing it up yesterday, so the rooms are actually looking like rooms, and the Conservation Authority participates in our meeting, so we're quite pleased with the progress there. We then toured the first floor and second floor of the main building of Old House. All the demolition is done, and they're beginning the framing on the second floor. So what we're planning is a virtual tour for council in the next couple of weeks, and then probably, or for the building committee. Obviously, any member of council could attend if you wish, and an in-person one in June when most of the interior work will be done. The Bud Clayton room and the addition at the south. So the addition where the Bud Clayton room is and the addition to the south will begin as soon as the frost is out of the ground. But the main foyer entrance is now all the concrete block and steel that was installed. So it'll progress very quickly, and it's going to be a significant change for how you enter the building and the customer experience. Next, please. Then this is perhaps my favorite picture. This is the basement. So there is a walkway from level 0 to the paramedic suite, which is underneath the new council chambers and boardroom through the basement. So there's significant renovations going on there, and like everything else, when you start doing demolition on a 100-year-old home, you find things like sewer pipes buried just below the surface of the concrete. So there's some interior changes that needed to be made, but making good progress on that too. Next, please. So this is the interior of the paramedic suite with the drywall on. Was that yesterday's, or no, that would have been last, it would have been from 2 weeks ago. Yeah, so there's a lot more drywall on now. They're almost finished. Next, please. So the 2023 Council Strategic Planning Update, we began with the pre-launch meeting on January the 13th, and we're in the launch phase. Began the launch phase in January with background research and document review. Just as a reminder, our consultants were also involved in our regional CIP project, so had done a fair amount of pre-research, if I can call it that, and consultation. So consultations began mid-January and conclude by the end of February, although we had Central Frontenac last night and this council today. So we're looking at a draft strategic plan and presentation by the end of May, and a final report submission to presentation by mid-July. Next slide. HR recruitment. So through March the 13th, so not quite through the first, through the first 2.5 months, about 95 new recruitments, including one posting for up to 30 part-time paramedics. We have been attending job fairs virtually, but we did manage to get to one live at the Invista Center, and with 4 or 5 different applications received, but still flying the flag and continue to promote all of our openings on social media, all of our social media channels. All 3 collective agreements are currently in negotiations on conciliation with 109, scheduled soon, and OPSU in April. The HRIS system that we received funding for from the Modernization Fund jointly with Leeds and Grenville. The recruitment module has been rolled out. We continue to work on the other modules including the orientation, onboarding, performance management, succession management. So two purposes of HRIS. It simplifies the input phase because you enter Kelly Pender's name and it goes through all the different modules. So it eliminates errors that way. And for council's information, it will dramatically improve our ability to report to council on recruitment and training, and do things like be able to print out a training report when we have, our CARF certification, or looking at when the province comes in to audit our paramedic services, for example. Speaking of CARF accreditation, the review is scheduled for the 27th and 28th. The surveyors will come here and we'll be reviewing all of our information. Susan and the staff at Fairmount have been in preparation since well before Christmas. The documentation requirement for accreditation is fairly significant. We did receive the highest accreditation the last time around, and we're hoping to do the same. The annual timed egress fire drill, which again takes a fair amount of time on behalf of staff to prepare for, but a big thank you as well to the residents who are part of that mandatory process. But we did come through in flying colors and rehearsing your timed egress fire drill, something you never want to have to use live, but it's very important to us. And in terms of recruitment, as I said, just about every aspect of the long-term care, we're still looking for staff, RPNs, PSWs, cooks, dietary aides, and even maintenance assistants. Excuse me. So this is the notification of the Auditor General's. I just want to put that up there so we can have a bit of a discussion about long-term care and some of the risks involved. And I expect that, like a lot of things the Auditor General does, there's going to be a deep dive and then a lot of head scratching. But through the Warden's Caucus, we have asked for a meeting with the Auditor General, likely be with some of her staff, to go through some of our concerns that resulted from the KPMG study and the work that we did in 2021 and 2022. So it's very timely. I continue to advocate that 4 hours of care is the model, but we do have staffing concerns just because the staff are not there to hire, and that the current model of the province of Ontario is administrative monetary penalties if you are not in compliance. And our position has been that, if we can't hire somebody because those people don't exist, then the administration and council of that home should not be held responsible for that. So although the province has that ultimate hammer, they haven't used it, and we continue to advocate for a reasonable solution. And as I said, the province has made a commitment of 30,000 new beds in Ontario, but the funding formula just does not work for most operators in Ontario unless you have a rich foundation behind you. Increasing taxes to pay for long-term care, which is a provincially mandated program delivered by your municipality, just is not responsible. The other concern with the capital funding formula is the effect on our annual repayment limit, which is essentially the credit limit on our Visa card. And for the county of Frontenac, or most counties in Eastern Ontario, to be building a new home will basically take up, if not all, a significant portion of the borrowing capacity, so that if you had another issue, that it just you won't be able to borrow for it. So our position has been that should not be part of the annual repayment limit. That loan is effectively guaranteed by the province of Ontario, and that it should be taken off the annual repayment limit, but we'll see how that works. Next one, please. So the Ontario Health Sector Spending Plan Review, and I believe that the clerk circulated this, is also an issue that the Warden's Caucus will be reviewing over the next few weeks and leading up to AMO. as part of our advocacy, but it continues to paint a picture of underfunding, and we're all not quite sure where the new deal with the federal government will end up, whether that will end up saving the province money and there will be no effect on municipal contributions for healthcare, paramedics, long-term care, et cetera, or how that's going to work. And I think it's probably going to take several months to maybe a year or two budget cycles before we're going to understand the full impact of those decisions. But we continue to think that municipalities should share in the federal program funding program. So next slide, please. Frontenac paramedics attended the Queen's University research talk with Dr. Brooks on the Neighbors Saving Neighbors program, and understand Councillor Greenwood Spears also attended. So that program is beginning to roll out, and big thank you to Dr. Brooks. It's a new and innovative way of approaching the defibrillator program, and thank you to the paramedics. Deputy Chief Gowdy has been involved in that to a considerable amount, and Matt Mills, our communications officer, has been doing a lot of the communications. So thank you to everybody that attended. Next slide. Congratulations and best wishes to our good friend, primary care, or advanced care paramedic Percy Vine, who's retiring at the middle of April after more than 30 years of service. And Percy has been a fixture in the paramedic service in Frontenac for a number of years, and his dedication to the residents has been very much appreciated. Anybody that knows Percy knows he's a kind and caring, compassionate paramedic, the kind that we strive to hire and train, and his presence will be missed at the service. Next slide. The chief, on behalf of the service, also attended a memorial in honor of one of our advanced care paramedics from 2006 to 2010, who was also a partner of our chief's, who tragically passed away before Christmas, but the memorial was just a few weeks back. So our thoughts and prayers are with Mary Ann and her family. Next slide. So just a bit of an update. We were up to just under 50,000 engagements, measurable engagements across all of our channels through January, which is a 4% increase over December. Top performing item by a wide margin in the web and social media relates to recruitment, in particular for paramedics. And the top general interest post was January 3rd, carryover from December, celebrating Graham's Pharmacy and Fargo's General Store and their win with the Frontenac Access Award. Next slide, please. Paramedics and partner support. This is St. Patrick's Day weekend. And being 1/4 Irish descent, I wish everybody a happy St. Patrick's Day, but I'd go so far as to say, please party safely and respect the law enforcement and paramedics that will be serving our community this weekend. Kingston was just voted the best student city in Canada, and we're proud of that reputation, but our paramedics also have to serve the students. So please party responsibly.
Warden.
Was one of the questions on the survey about the entertainment for that university, Queens, the city to be named one of them? I'm just wondering what the survey said then, because we have that reputation also.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. Next slide, please. So planning and economic development, the inaugural meetings of the committee will take place on March the 29th. Welcome everybody to the next Planning Advisory Committee, and we're now calling it Planning and Economic Development Committee. A number of provincial legislation changes. On February the 15th, the county approved the official plan amendments for the 4 townships. So we are now in compliance with the new regulations, and the next step is for county planning staff to be working with the townships, drafting the new pre-application consultation bylaws to respond to Bill 109. And just a reminder that that's really important, because that will protect your municipality from having to give back fees. So I know that Sonia and the staff here at South Frontenac have been working on a number of different approaches and looking at other bylaws that have existed that they'll be proposing to the 4 townships. The township of South Frontenac currently considering update to their fees bylaw, and county planning staff are working with the other 3 townships. And I think as my thought and advice with respect to fees is, you never want to be the highest and you never want to be the lowest, but you want to be comfortably in the middle, and understand that, for planning fees, anything you don't collect from the applicant goes to the taxpayer. So that information will be going back to all 4 townships over the next little while, and you'll have options to consider that with the changes to the development charges for South and for the islands. There will be less money coming in, so it might be timely to look at your fees and charges bylaw. That information will be coming forward. Next, please. Planning applications been a little bit slower than the last couple of years during the heady times of the pandemic, but still fairly steady. And the number of inquiries has been increasing, as it always does, as winter turns to spring and people begin to think about building permits. And I know that our building officials are gearing up for another busy year. And thank you to the planning staff at all 4 townships for all their hard work and getting those applications ready for your various committees and councils. Next, please. So, economic development update. Join our weekly email list for economic development, and the QR code is in front of you. And we have provided a March break update. We're halfway through March break. And the next business event is a networking breakfast on April the 26th. And if you're interested in further information or attending, please reach out to Richard or Debbie in the Economic Development Office. Next, please. And that's my favorite slide. Thank you.
Any questions or comments for Kelly? Warden?
What effect will, and I think it's called 3-word app now, something like that, on the 911 Next Gen? There's been a couple emergencies that people have been sort of in the middle of nowhere, and they're using this. I don't know if that's the right title though, but apparently they're finding them pretty quick and pretty easy now. And is everybody going to go to that now because they have a cell phone, or what changes?
Turn that over to our master map expert there, Mr.
So yeah, the app you're referring to is What 3 Words, and it basically maps out the entire world in, I think it's small grid anyway. It's like a 5-meter square. So if you're in a remote area that you can't access at normal addressing, you'd be able to tell emergency responders those 3 words that pop up, as long as you have service on your phone, I guess. And they'd be able to locate you anywhere in the world precisely within 5 meters. So 5 to 10, I can't remember what the exact grid size is, but.
They found somebody in Frontenac Park, and then they found somebody biking on that went through the ice, and I've just been hearing about it. So is that going to impact 911, or it still has to go ahead the way it was?
It'll still go ahead the way it was. I think that just helps in those circumstances where there isn't an address, or you're in a remote location deep in the woods kind of thing. So.
Judy, and then Fred.
Hi, just when you were talking about the strategic planning meeting up in Peterborough, and that you're mentioning innovations in AI and housing, I was hoping it also included agriculture.
Actually, the mayor of Peterborough, Jeff Leo, was bringing up the same thing. So at this point, we are paralleling the provincial response, provincial priorities. But the application that the OLC is building will be applicable across a number of different industries. So it is a skills-based kind of program. So instead of saying engineering technologist, it breaks down the skills and then looks at, for example, what kind of micro credentialing would be required, or with healthcare, looking at the scope of practice of nurse practitioner right down to PSW, and what kinds of things can be done through robotics or through artificial intelligence that would allow the nurse to concentrate on the patient or the resident. So the programs they're building are going to be portable to other industries. So whether that is looking for agricultural workers, the other one that keeps coming up is manufacturing workers, particularly given the battery plant in Loyalist Township. But again, at this point, we're just trying to do some proof of concept stuff in the two provincial areas of priority, which are healthcare and sorry, what was the other one? Healthcare and the trades, pardon me.
I was thinking more towards workers that could help us to move towards 365 growing cycles, and that whether through containers or other innovative projects, as well as support for organic farmers, and that with the different methods to take care of the bugs that are coming more and more from the south, and that things of that nature. And that, so I hope that it does translate out, because agriculture is really a base.
And it will. So for example, because it's not job title based, it's skills based. So as an agricultural owner or worker, you can plug your skills into these kinds of softwares, and it can tell you that here are the job opportunities in agriculture. Or if you are an owner, it can tell you where those skills exist in Eastern Ontario, and we're hoping that this will be rolled out across Ontario, that maybe you could do micro-credentialing to get somebody that was a technician in one area to be a technician in another area.
Ed?
Yes, thank you, Deputy Warden. Regarding the next generation 911, my concern is the servers. For instance, there's a lot of areas that are accessible by Bell users, and there's other areas that are accessible by Rogers. And I believe the Snow Road Tower is up and running right now. I'm not 100% sure, but I get a little signal on my Bluetooth in my phone. Makes me think that I'm getting a signal, but I don't have the Rogers service. Now with the 911, is that going to make any difference whether or not you have a different server that you'll be able to access at 911?
So there's two parts to the question, and EORN will be providing an update at some point over the next couple of months to all county councillors. We do so they'll be able to talk to you about where the cell towers are. EORN is no longer involved in the broadband aspect, and obviously you still need that fiber to get to the towers, but they'll be able to answer that question. The second part of that is what's called the public safety broadband network, which is being built into all of the towers, which is less carrier driven and more agnostic, so that your firefighters can use a cell phone and somebody using a cell phone can connect directly. So it's far easier to connect, but keep in mind that the primary target is existing roads and existing houses. So there's still going to be the Crown land, the back end of Bon Echo Park kinds of situations where cellular is not going to be available. The overall project was anticipated to end in 2024, It's been extended to 2025 in large part because of the complexity in dealing with land use permits. So EORN is meeting with all of our staff the end of March to talk about how a road access permit works in North Frontenac, for example, and working with Bell and Rogers to facilitate that so it can move forward faster.
Warden?
And on that note that Mr. CAO mentioned, EORN, we do have questions at council too. What's going on with internet? What's going on with all of this stuff? EORN is going to hold a public meeting, and the suggestion was that all member municipalities would be invited. So at some point, and whether that's April or whenever it was, probably going to have a public meeting more or less at the, let's say, I'll just say Verona. But any member from all of our participating council members in Frontenac County can come and hear the same story instead of somebody going, well, what's happening with this or what's happening with that? So the suggestion was that, and they thought that was a good idea. So they're probably going to set that up at some point.
Yeah, and we'd probably combine that with an update on the housing project so that we had everybody together. You could hear about the 7 and 7 project at the same time that we hear about the EORN. Now, the EORN part with cellular does contain some confidential proprietary information, so there would likely be a closed session involved with that. But yeah, I think it's important that everybody hears the same information because you are the ones getting the questions. So
Proprietary part was dealing with property owners or where they were actually going, and they didn't want to disclose a lot of that stuff, obviously, ahead of time.
Bill?
Thank you, Deputy Warden. CEO, you mentioned recruitment in your report. Do you have any specifics around recruitment, training, hiring for the Howe Island Ferry?
yeah, there were interviews last week and I believe this week as well. We have some individuals that are already qualified. Having said that, we have lost some staff to MTO as well. Although we pay slightly better than MTO, there is a larger career trajectory. And we have received confirmation from St. Lawrence College that they will be offering 2 rounds of the required training program. And we have worked with candidates to offer tuition support for that program as well.
Harry first and then the warden.
Thank you. Just for clarity, going back to Councillor Fowler's comment about the Snow Road Tower, it's up, antennas are there, it's powered, but it's still not functional. So I don't know why or why not. It just is what it is. So, thank you.
Ron?
One of the other things that come up at the Eastern Ontario Wardens too was they want to advocate for changing the rules for what was the terminology we used? We didn't want to say new Canadians. We didn't want, but anybody who comes here, doesn't matter if it's from Quebec or another province in Ontario, that they can go to work right away. So that's also one of the advocacies they're going to push, whether you're coming from a foreign country or another province, that the rules are treated the same, that they could start work right away. So they're trying to push that so there's less delay.
Less delay and more workers to get the job done. Anyone else? Okay, if not, thank you, CAO. Good report. All right, there is no unfinished business. So we have the consent report, and this is number A to, I believe it's D.
Moved by Councillor Gowdy and seconded by Councillor Leonard that council consent to the approval of reports A through D that are considered routine items.
Any discussion on any of these? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Committee of Management of Fairmont Home, there's no report there. And we have reports from the Chief Administrative Officer. Those are for information.
Moved by Counselor Fowler, seconded by Counselor Lichty, resolved that the Council of the County of Frontenac receive the Emergency and Transportation Services 2022 Legislative Response Time Standard Performance Plan, reporting to Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care for information, and further that the 2022 Response Time Standard Performance Plan outcomes for the County of Frontenac be reported to the Director, Emergency Health Regulatory and Accountability Branch, Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care, as required by legislation.
I had a question on page 3 of it in regards to public education and incidents of note. And it talks about for emergency situations, municipality, including messaging to residents at different times during flooding season. I'm wondering about emergencies with ferries.
So there are two aspects to emergency preparedness. You need to have a committee and have a communications program
Mhm.
at your municipality. Matt works at the regional level and does communications as well. So
This was under the heading of public education and incident of note. And that, so I
In-
just wondered if there's a record or something of that nature.
in which,
Page 3 of the Emergency Management Program Committee. Please. Am I on the wrong piece?
Sorry, that's already been approved. That was under the
Oh, that
consent
was under-
reports. This is the Emergency Response Time Plan Performance Standards.
this is the
through-
paramedic.
Sorry about that. Okay,
Okay,
I'll ask it.
all right. So any questions on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Next, annual accessibility status report.
Moved by Counselor Greenwood Spears, seconded by Counselor Saunders. Be it resolved that the Frontenac that should come out of there. Annual accessibility status report attached to this report as Appendix A be received, and further that in accordance with Ontario Regulation 9111 Integrated Accessibility Standards Section 4.3, that a copy of this annual accessibility status report be posted to the County of Frontenac website, and further that in accordance with Ontario Regulation 9111 Integrated Accessibility Standards Section 4.3.1 and 3.2, that a copy of this annual accessibility status report be forwarded to the Frontenac lower tiers for posting on their respective websites. And I do apologize, as Mr. Pender noted earlier, there was a glitch with our Accessibility Advisory Committee. So we had accidentally held a meeting without quorum, so it didn't make it a formal meeting. So this is now coming directly through council. But the Accessibility Committee those present did look at it and were very supportive of it.
Any questions or comments from any member of council? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Okay, are there any questions on the information reports by any member? And those are corporate services, emergency and transportation services, corporate services, the quarterly administrative facilities update, or emergency and transportation services and ambulance remounts. No questions or comments? Oh, Jerry, go ahead.
On the ambulance remounts, I just want a clarification. How many ambulances are we actually doing? When I read the document, I was just a little uncertain. So are we doing two? Actually wrote that down, which I probably can't find now. But just how many are we doing this year? How many are we doing next year? That's all.
So we're still waiting on one of the ambulances that we ordered from last year that's going to come this year, as well as our replacement for our vehicle that was written off.
Okay.
And then we're also doing two remounts this year, one that was left over from last year, one from this year.
So 4 in total this year and 2 next year.
That's the plan.
And then you're coming back 2024, possibly looking for more.
Potentially.
Thank you. That's all.
Moved by Counselor Leonard, seconded by Counselor Gaudy, that council revert from committee of the whole council to council.
So then we have the adoption of the report of the committee of the whole.
Moved by Deputy Warden Smith, seconded by Counselor Fowler, that the report of the committee of the whole council be adopted and that the necessary actions or bylaws be enacted.
Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Notices of motions and notices of which have been given. We have a request to the Ministry of Transportation of Ontario, public consultation and reconsideration of two ferry systems. Moved by
Counselor Greenwood Spears, seconded by Counselor Saunders, whereas the new Wolf Islander
I don't think we
4.
have to read that all, though. I don't think we have to read that all. That was the intent
Do we
before, if
not?
it's up
Okay.
on the screen, right?
Uh,
So,
It's not up on the screen.
okay,
Whereas the new Wolf Islander 4 is anticipated to be in service in the spring of 2023, and whereas the construction of the new ferry was first announced, the Minister of Transportation, the Honorable Stephen Del Duca, advised that the existing Wolf Islander 3 would be acting in tandem with the Wolf Islander 4, thereby doubling ferry capacity to the island. And whereas in designing the new Kingston Ferry Terminal, the amount of on-site parking was drastically reduced in light of the increased ferry capacity and a perceived reduced need for walk-on parking. And whereas the Township of Frontenac Island's mayor and council were recently advised that the Ministry of Transportation will not be implementing the plan for a second ferry as contemplated. And whereas the decision to eliminate the second ferry was made without consultation, which affected citizens, impacted councils, including the Township of Frontenac Islands and the City of Kingston, police, fire, and paramedic services. And whereas the impact of this decision is far-reaching for citizens, now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the County of Frontenac hereby requests that the Honorable Carolyn Mulrooney immediately consider the decision to reduce the original plans for a two-ferry service and reinstate the two-ferry plan as contemplated by the ministry. And further, that in the absence of a plan for a two-ferry service or a delay of the two-ferry service, that the ministry conduct broad consultation with the community, including the township and the city, regarding the impacts and mitigation strategies for their decision, in particular parking, emergency response, and quality of life. And further, that a copy of this motion be forwarded to the Township of Frontenac Islands, the City of Kingston, and Mr. Ted Hsu, MPP.
Yeah, there's just one little piece in there. The report was made to the mayor and one councillor at a meeting, and it was for the foreseeable future. It was first a denial that there was ever two ferries agreed to, and then they paraphrased it for the foreseeable future due to staffing. So just a small wordage change. It didn't come to council. It came to mayor and councillor that were at a meeting, that we were advised that there would not be two ferries for the foreseeable future after they first said not at all.
discussion, comments, Councillor Lichty.
I read this and I understand where you're coming from, and I do think we should all support one another to the maximum extent that we can. But quite frankly, Councillor, I have some issues with this particular motion. I think it should have gone through your township first. Did it? Okay, that isn't, pardon?
Monday night, we've asked for a meeting and that with the council, or with the minister.
So secondly, why would you want a 45 or 50-year-old ferry that when you read the internet, it's got full of complaints? One guy puts an article on saying, I have a medical appointment. I have to get a hotel because I can't trust the ferry service. You've got in 2018, the province of Ontario bought two ferries. Yours is worth in excess of $50 million. You got 60% or 55% more carrying capacity. You got 33% more people carrying capacity, and you want to twin it with a 50-year-old vessel? I don't get it. The other thing is, I understand why you downsized or why the staging areas were downsized. I'd be using the fact that you can't get the second ferry for the foreseeable future, to use that to get the province to upgrade those areas.
Footnote, this was through broad consultation that the MTO came up with the other ferry being kept. There always has to be a backup ferry in that because the ferries do have to come out of service for inspection, et cetera. The Frontenac ferry that usually backs up the Wolf Islander 3 is actually an older ferry, and it's the one that's currently going to be replaced from Amherst View. So out of the two, the better of the two is the Wolf Islander 3. Can't really ask the province to come up with another big ferry to be the replacement ferry. So that's the better of the two options, and that is what MTO recognized from the get-go. So a lot of plans were made, including potential development of homes in Marysville, walkable community. They eliminated our free parking that we used to keep a spare car in Kingston in order to minimize having to line up for the boat. So the dock was shortened. There's a whole host of decisions that were made at the county level, including when you look even at the paramedic ambulance service. So the province needs to stick with what they agreed to and what plans were made around, even if it was a Liberal government at the time, because they have not issued any formal notice. Their communication has been limited at best and vague in many respects. So the fact that this came out first as a freedom of information piece that arrived to a resident, that it had been discussed at a meeting, and it came out to the public and to the media, it's something that, you know, was mused at that time. I said, well, it's not musing in that when we're making plans around it. You need to shore it up. And if this is what came out of the broad public consultation back in 2015, 16, you need to hold to it, or else you need to come back and do another broad public consultation, because quite frankly, I don't need a lot more homes built in Marysville if I can't get the people off the island now. And the other piece of musing was a 1.5 hour transportation schedule, which will kill the community. So there's a lot that has to be solidified with this new minister to make sure that our community isn't crushed.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm just looking at this. If I was in Toronto and got this, I would look at it as the county of Frontenac being very ungrateful. Well, you've got a 55 or like, I'm using 54, 55 million just by straight lining the cost of the two ferries. Yours is the larger. You've got brand new docking facilities. They rebuilt the staging areas and whatever. I would just think that we're not very appreciative of what we've got. And I wasn't aware that you had the Wolf, or the one from Amherstburg, or the Wolf Islander 3 is going to be a backup. But when you have issues now and you're not doubling it, but you're adding 50, 60% additional carrying capacity, I just don't think it looks very good. I would like to see this rephrased, that because of this, because they used the word renege on their original promise made by the previous government, that they should be coming in and reworking the staging areas, enlarging them so you can only use one facility or one vessel.
Just hold on. I want to make a comment first. County of Frontenac has nothing to do with this. Don't keep saying the County of Frontenac. They had nothing to do with if the dock was bigger, smaller, more cars, less cars, any of this. It's not the County of Frontenac. Let's just be clear here. The only part that we had conversations or control of was ambulance service, nothing else. This dock has nothing to do with the County of Frontenac. I assume the resolution is coming here just because they want us to support the resolution in principle. I doubt if the province ever come right out and wrote on paper that they're promising 2 ferries, 1 ferry, or 10 ferries. It probably was discussed in a meeting. Whether anybody that discusses stuff in a meeting as a minister is concrete and stone, probably not. So I just want to be clear though, it's not the County of Frontenac that's doing this, period. So don't mix us up in it. If we want
I
to
assure
support
you
the
I wasn't.
resolution, I don't care, but.
I wasn't. I mean, it may have sounded that way and I
Yeah.
apologize. But
Okay.
I'm just saying, if we approve this, it looks like we approve this resolution, the way it's written, then it looks like we're saying you know, whether it's a misinterpretation or not, there should be a two ferry service.
Counselor Spears, Greenwood Spears.
First, this resolution was actually drafted by the county CAO, who attended virtually all the meetings, including the Kingston City Council presentation, where the head of the project repeatedly pointed out, this is a dual ferry service. This is why this was being done. It was very clear to the city that these decisions were being made on a dual ferry basis, and that was by their lead for the project. And so it's always been the understanding. There has been no formal notification from the ministry of a change. However, there hasn't been a lot of communication from the ministry on a lot of points. So we will need to get a lot more in writing from them, but we do have witnesses and plans were made and consultation was done. And that was part of the documentation at the time and presentation to all the levels of government, I believe. Thank you.
So the issue at the time, and it was 2017, was whether there was going to continue to be on dock parking. So there was about 50 parking spots on the previous dock. The province of Ontario announced that they were eliminating that. The reason why they were eliminating that was because there was going to be two ferries, not and less wait time. So we were looking at 55 cars on the existing one, going to 75 cars. So more than doubling the capacity. So the province saved millions of dollars by not extending the dock to accommodate parking. The city of Kingston had concerns with the lack of parking on the dock because that would push parking into the city, and the two largest parking lots in that vicinity are currently under construction. So they invited the MTO to their council meeting, and I provided the mayor and the warden and the deputy warden with a clip of that meeting where MTO promised that there would be a two-car ferry in return for eliminating on the dock parking. So they had that consultation, they made that decision, and they made that public announcement. But that was the result of probably 2 years of technical committee meetings. So I think what the motion is suggesting, and to be clear, staff routinely help councillors craft motions, and I didn't help with this one. And if there isn't going to be parking there, decisions were made, and there isn't going to be a backup ferry. The city of Kingston made decisions, the county of Frontenac made decisions, Frontenac Islands made decisions, all based upon that fact that the ministry apparently backtracked on 2 years ago without telling anybody, until the question was asked by Mayor Greenwood Spears. So is the county responsible for this issue? No. Is the city of Kingston? No. Is the township responsible? The city made the pledge, saved millions of dollars in capital construction to eliminate parking on the dock with the promise that there would be two ferries. And I hope that helps and not hurts the conversation. And I'm not saying whether you should pass the motion or not. That's a purely political decision, but the facts of the matter are as I presented.
Could we amend the motion then also to say that it was supported by?
So in the first resolve clause, we could put, now therefore, the council of the county of Frontenac hereby supports the township of Frontenac, supports the request by the township of Frontenac Islands that the Honorable Caroline Mulrooney immediately reconsider. Does that work
Are
better?
you
for
okay with
everyone?
that?
Reconsider and clarify the two areas.
Well, you're going to meet with the minister anyway.
We wanted to clarify because they've never notified us that they backtracked. And first they denied it, and they said, didn't proceed in the future, I want something.
And I think one of the key words in there is also, if you aren't going to do that, what are the mitigation efforts? So for example, when they're doing work or in the summertime, when the ferry was going to Dawson Point, MTO provided transportation from Dawson Point to downtown Marysville as a mitigation. When there was road needs, MTO supported the township to repave from the Dawson Point dock to Marysville. So they're willing to consider mitigation. They made this decision. It is on tape that they made this decision. They've clearly backtracked, but they told nobody except themselves until Mayor Greenwood Spears asked the question.
So we need.
Perhaps,
That the dual system, dual ferries be clarified by the minister.
Or what they're.
Or what their mitigation will be, because in reality, it may well impact our official plan and secondary plan, et cetera, and that.
Yep, okay. So
the other way to do it would be to pass a simple motion to endorse Frontenac Island's motion that was passed on Monday, which shows support, but leaves it in the township's hands to move forward.
jeepers, that's way easier. Why didn't you say that at the start?
So does it work if we add another and further that the Ministry of Transportation identify mitigation strategies in the absence of a two ferry system?
That is the second and further, including the township regarding the impacts and mitigation strategies for the decisions.
Councillor Saunders.
Thank you, Warden. I second this motion because I think it's needed, first of all, and I certainly appreciate County Council putting their weight behind us. For a little bit of background, this project, as you well know, is exceeding $200 million. It's, by some accounts, about 2 years behind. We had a recent example where we received a new Simcoe Island ferry, and that ferry is undergoing several required modifications. So we're lacking some confidence in the ability of this new system to be delivered without serious implications, restrictions, whatever. So whatever support we can have from the county, I think adds weight to our request. The other is the resolution points out that it's not just, and please take this the right way, it's not just some folks living on Wolf Island who are concerned about not getting to the doctor's appointment. This is impacting all of the areas that the mayor has pointed out, including downtown Kingston with traffic and everything else. So it's more broad reaching than just, I'm sorry, I can't get to my doctor's appointment. And your support as a county and putting that weight behind it would be most appreciated.
For my ignorance, is Simcoe Ferry electric or is it?
It's a cable ferry, a replacement of the previous one. So,
But not electric.
it's not electric.
That's probably why I come in on time. No. So as amended, that we are supporting the islands for what they, okay? Do you need it read or everybody's okay? And the mitigation strategies as they're gonna, if they meet with them. Okay? Any other questions on it? All in favor of support? Carry. Is anyone giving notice of motion for the April meeting? Seeing none. Communications, are there any questions on the communications from A to Q? Seeing none. Is there other business? Bylaws?
Moved by Councillor Lichty, seconded by Councillor Greenwood Spears, resolved that leave be given to the mover to introduce bylaws A and B that have been circulated to all members of County Council, and that bylaws A and B be read a first and second time.
Any questions? I think the weed inspector has done a great job, so All in favor? Carry. Congratulations.
Moved by Counselor Lichty, seconded by Counselor Greenwood Spears, resolved that bylaws A and B be read a third time, signed, sealed, and finally passed.
All in favor? Carry. Then
Moved
it
by
says adjourn.
Moved by Deputy Warden Smith, seconded by Counselor Saunders, that the meeting hereby adjourn at 10:34 a.m.
All in favor? Carry.